Okay, my name is Greg Nichols. I'm the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services. And my assistant and who helped set this all up is Dan Buckley, a grad assistant from Adult Student Life. And this is a presentation that I've done several times for the traditional age college students here. So I'm happy to kind of pass this along to you guys, because I still think some of these tips I'm going to be providing to you, I think will still be worthwhile. The goal here today, and I'm not sure how long this will take, 30, maybe 40 minutes. The goal is for you to come away with an idea or two that you can put into practice. So I have a practical kind of viewpoint, but some of this material will make sense to you. You may have heard it before, some of these ideas, and some of the ideas might be a little bit different and new. So anyway, let's get underway. Here's what we'll cover today. We're not going to cover every single item in this list, but most of them. Greater awareness of the reasons people procrastinate. I do have a heavy emphasis on procrastination here. When I ask students how many in my group are procrastinators, typically 80% of the hands go up. Of course, there's a difference between procrastination on a kind of a normal scale, which just about everybody does, and chronic procrastination. Of course, it's on a continuum. So many of us fall on the end of the continuum where we realize it, we do it too much, but it's a hard habit to break. So we're going to cover procrastination quite a bit, but we'll also look at issues involving motivation and time management. One of the aspects we'll cover is the idea that we're very good at deceiving ourselves, and it's very good to be aware of how we, our own unique way of self-deception. We'll also cover the importance of becoming more connected and empathic towards your future self. So that might be a little different concept that we'll touch on. How to build commitment to your goals. A simple but vital tip towards curbing procrastination. We'll definitely cover that. And time management from a reverse psychology perspective. A goal setting that creates urgency and builds motivation, touching on that. The psychological trap that can fuel procrastination and how to escape it. Strategies to deal with potential distractions. How to make changes, how to make the changes stick. And awareness of more complex issues that make procrastination such a hard habit to break. Okay. Well, first, starting off with this slide, this is a list of reasons that can come into play when students don't do well academically. Whether it's a lower grade, whether it's doing poorly on a test, receiving a poor grade on a paper. There's a questionnaire that goes out across the nation. St. Joe's students take it as well, where this question is asked, and students are asked to check off the main reasons why they didn't do well. So here's a list. This is just part of the list. But what I'd like you to do now is to just in your own mind select what you think are the top 3 or 4 reasons out of this list that students will select most often as the reasons that they didn't do well in a particular academic area. So I'll let you just scan that list for a moment, and then we'll come up, I'll show you the answers. St. Joe students follow the national trend. It may not be a questionnaire that you received. Maybe a couple of you have, but mostly our traditional age full-time day students receive this questionnaire once every 2-3 years, and this is one of the questions. Okay, so here's the top reason, and every year it's the same. Let's see if you got it. Stress and anxiety. And typically students are rather good at guessing that that's the top one when I quiz them on this, but it is selected most often. And it makes sense, because when we're stressed and anxious, it's very difficult to concentrate and to focus. Our bodies are actually acting in a way to in a fight-flight mode. So our bodies are not geared to focus, concentrate, and relax. So when we're highly stressed or highly anxious, this obviously gets in the way of good academic performance. Okay, not surprisingly, sleep difficulties. That's gone up the list over the past several years. Sleep difficulties used to be down lower on this list, but this is not just a problem for students. This is a national problem. And we can, you're probably not surprised to see this near the top of the list of reasons students say they didn't do well in a particular course or a particular paper or test. Colds and flu. Okay, so we do have a medical issue here that still comes up for many students, many of us, and take away from production. You can see maybe 15 years ago, this wasn't number 4. Internet use, computer games, social media. But these are the perfect devices for distraction. So that's not surprising, and it keeps going up the list. Work, especially maybe for the older students, the non-traditional age students. So for you folks out there, work is going to come up, and it's probably a little bit higher than on this list at number 5. I'll just go down to the other ones. Depression, concern for a troubled family member or friend, extracurricular activities, relationship difficulties, and finances. Okay, that just sort of sets a background. You can see that the vast majority of those items are psychological in nature. So why do we procrastinate? So again, we're really focusing when it becomes a problem. A little bit of procrastination is probably a healthy thing. So we don't want to be perfectionistic and maybe too rigid about getting everything done way ahead of time. But chronic procrastination has to do with mood repair. It has to do, the reason why we procrastinate really is to cope. It's to cope with negative feelings that come up when we're sitting down or contemplating doing work that we need to do. Whether it's boredom, anxiety, self-doubt, self-criticism, just general restlessness. If it's negative, there's a tendency, a kind of an itch to want to avoid it. And for some of us, it's just become a habit to kind of give into that, maybe probably too quickly, and deceive ourselves and get into this chronic habit of procrastination. It's very good, this is in the realm of self-awareness. It's really good to be aware of the costs of any bad habit that we have if we want to go about correcting it, limiting it. So what are the costs of the procrastination that we do? It's, and the point here is it's not just about lost opportunity to do well in an academic sense. Certainly that's very high up on the list. What we know about chronic procrastination is that it impacts our well-being. It impacts how we think about ourselves in a negative way. And because of the mind-body connection, it actually has an impact on our immune system. People who chronically procrastinate are more ill during the year. They have less self-esteem, less self-compassion. So there's a lot of reasons. It's good to be very aware of the long list of reasons in terms of the costs of procrastination. And as I said, this begins with self-awareness. So the more self-aware we are of the reasons we procrastinate, the costs, etc., the better able we are to make a conscious choice, a wiser choice, if you will, of what's best for us to do next, which isn't always going to be do more work. We're thinking of our well-being, our self-esteem, and that can be the basis to make a wiser choice of what we're going to do. It's all about these little decisions that we have to make during the day. So how we deceive ourselves. One of the messages I'd like you to come away with is the need to be suspicious of what your mind is telling you, what our minds are telling us. Not all the time, of course. When we're solving particular problems, our mind's cooperating just fine. But what we know is that it's very hard to control our thoughts all the time, especially when we're in a negative kind of mood. It's very, very difficult to control our thoughts. And also that because we're going to have that need to repair our mood, we're in a negative mood, we're going to go for relief, and our mind's going to tell us to distract ourselves, to procrastinate, and that's not always going to be in our best interests. So I just want you to come away with the idea that to be a little bit more suspicious of what our minds are telling us, especially when it's first thing in the morning when we wake up, or other times during the day, because our minds may not be, often are not in our best interests. Our minds can sometimes turn on us and can be our own worst enemy, so to speak. So here's one idea. Our future self can be a stranger. What the hell were you thinking? Your future. So we can procrastinate when it becomes a problem at the expense of our future self. So whether it's yourself that later on in the day today, tonight, or tomorrow morning, sometimes we can motivate ourselves when we become more empathic, if you will, for ourselves. It's self-compassion with our future self in mind. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. So I do this at times when I think about, oh, I'll just get up earlier in the morning and finish a report I have to do. I realized over time that I'm not that accurate, and people are not that accurate in general at realizing how much time they really need. And maybe it's my desire to go to sleep that takes over, and again, it's at the expense of my future self in the morning, and sometimes that'll work, but often the point is it does not, and that's again self-awareness and being a little deceptive of what our mind is telling us at some points during the day. So when motivation is lacking, think about moving ahead on behalf of your future self. So it's not like you're developing, if you will, empathy towards yourself. That's the idea that your future self shouldn't be a stranger. Work on developing the story of your why. This brings motivation into play here in terms of your purpose, your missions. We're going a little bit of a different track here. And I'm going to have you do this exercise. It'll take a few minutes. But this is a way to kind of summon up some motivation. And it connects with the future self as well, the future self concept. How committed are you? What is your why? What is the meaning of life? I don't know. The computers are down. Okay. But the idea here is we're working on intrinsic motivation, which we know is much more powerful than extrinsic rewards, rewards and punishments. When it comes from internal, when the reward is internal satisfaction, when the reward is self-esteem, that's a more powerful lever for us. So this is the graduation day exercise, which I'll have you do. So all you need is a pencil, pen, and a piece of paper. So the idea here is to look ahead to the day that you're finished with your program, whether it be a master's program now, or an undergraduate program. Think about that time where you've finished, you've completed your degree. So this is kind of an imagination exercise. And imagine there's a ceremony held. Maybe 50, maybe 100 people in the room, but people that know you, and they're there, and you're in the audience as well. And this is a ceremony, and someone gets up to speak about what your years in college, what your years taking courses, in the evening college, what it was like, what you were like as you were going through that process of getting your degree. And now, of course, you've got it, you've achieved it. But they're going to get up and talk about you from their heart. In other words, they're not just going to be saying things they don't believe in. They're going to talk about your whole life, not just your academic career, not just what you did academically. I'll just give you this is sort of things to think about. They're going to talk about perhaps what you've accomplished, how much you've experienced during this time, what your social life was like, what kind of a friend were you during this time, what would you want this person to say about your character. So the idea is you're going to write down what you wish this close friend, this mentor, not a parent, but someone who knows you really well and is going to speak about you. And this is what ideally you want them to say about your effort. Certainly your academic achievements can enter into this, but it's not just about that. It's about how balanced your life has been, how you took care of yourself. So the idea here is that this is not going to be an exactly accurate picture, probably, of what your life is like right now. It goes along with what you aspire to. And we're putting it into this framework of this imaginary ceremony where someone who knows you very well and comes up and speaks from their heart about you, and what would you want them to say? And the idea here is, of course, you want to, in time, we want to close that gap about what they're saying in these areas about us and where we feel we are right now. But we're going now for a little bit more of the ideal. So you write down what you would love for them to say about you. And just take a minute to write down. And this is just a map here with the slide of some areas to think about. I'm going to take another moment or two just to write down some thoughts there. So this can provide us with kind of a map of what we want our lives to be about. Not in a perfectionistic way, not as a kind of a way to kind of get down on ourselves because of how far we are from, being the kind of person that we want this imaginary mentor or close friend to say about us, but sort of a way to kind of orient our efforts. And it all should sort of tie together in a holistic way. So this is one kind of exercise that helps kind of generate some motivation, and not just exclusively towards getting academic work done, but in general. So it puts these kinds of important aspects in the front of our minds instead of the back of our minds, where they often get lost in the day-to-day struggle just to get through the day, which is a lot what life is like. But we try to make room for moving towards these greater values and incorporating them into our life. So it ties into what we're talking about, but in a very general way. And I wanted to just take you through that briefly because the students seem to like this. We do a little bit more with this exercise in terms of I have students draw a bullseye, and then they can take these qualities, these characteristics, and place them, initial them or have them symbolized and place them within the bullseye, either on the bullseye because that's what they're doing in their life right now, or outside of the bullseye to a degree, which shows how far they are from realizing that part of their life that they want to really grow towards or utilize more and more. So anyway, there's more to it than this, but I wanted to take you through because it's a very worthwhile exercise, I think. Okay. The next idea is this, that willpower, that connects with motivation, I'd like you to think of it as a muscle. In other words, if we want to create greater willpower, think of it as a muscle, and that if it's a muscle, of course, the more we exercise it, not too much because the muscle will weaken, but certainly exercise it quite a bit, the stronger it gets. So it's a little bit of a mind shift I'm asking you to do now. This is a really good tip that willpower can be developed. And it means the shift in thinking from I have to finish, to shift to I'm choosing to start. So what this tip has to do with is having the idea that we want to get really good at starting work. And we need to practice starting work. And of course, starting work is oftentimes, that fits into the procrastination habit. Students will tell me, and it's true of all of us, that's the hardest point, is just to get started. But if you think of it like a muscle that you can practice just starting work, even if you're not going to work for too long a period of time, even if we're only going to work for 10 or 15 minutes, the value can be in building up willpower, as opposed to feeling like, well, I didn't get enough done towards the the end of the project or the end of the paper. Well, maybe realistically you couldn't have kept going because of other things you really needed to do, but you took an opportunity to start work. And that has value in itself because it does build up willpower, and it makes it easier over time, easier to start and start again and start again until it becomes, there's less and less effort about it. So I'll just introduce this aspect to you too, this exercise. It's a good one. It's a little different way to go about time management. It's not my original idea. This is from Neil Fiore. Neil, and the last name is Fiore. He's written a book, The Now Habit. It's been out now for a while. It's very good, but one of the exercises he features is this unschedule, which has to do with being realistic and striving for balance. So here's what you do with the unschedule. And again, I don't have the handout for you, so you can do this later. But you would take a schedule, which is all the days of the week on top, times all the way down. You want to include sleep. So whatever times you typically get up, that's where you would begin. And the priority is putting in everything except studying into the schedule first. And you try to fit in everything that you would be realistically doing, which is commuting time, course class time, meetings time, time with family, leisure time. Obviously, some of these things have to get really squeezed or go by the wayside at particular points in the semester, but overall, we're striving for balance. So the idea first is to put everything into the schedule except study time. And then what's left over, and sometimes that's the value of this exercise, is seeing exactly what's left over. And maybe there's not too much there, but again, this ties into this idea of getting very good at starting work. The idea here is to then put aside the time for work, but you do it in a way where you see the opportunities. You don't put a block in advance. You see the opportunities to do work. And when you've done work for 20 minutes, half an hour, you shade it off, you cross it off. Sort of like the old days, the old days when we punch clocks, go to work and punch the clock. So this way, when you've done studying, you sort of you put the time in by crossing it off on your schedule. And the idea is that if you see a half an hour here or a half an hour there, you can choose to use that as a chance to develop the willpower muscle to start work. Certainly, you're going to want some bigger blocks to get some solid studying done. But again, this has to do with being realistic about our schedule. And it starts off in the opposite way that most time management schedules start off with, which is, okay, let's figure out what all the priority about studying, put all that time in first, and then let's work around it. So it's a little bit of reverse psychology perspective. So anyway, that's the kind of way to go about it. And I do have a schedule that I can download for you to use, but you can probably find one because it's just a blank schedule with the days of the week on the top and all the times down at the bottom. So that's the unschedule. Now, overall, an unwise approach to this problem, or a problem of trying to be more productive, trying to improve, our time management. trying to be less, procrastinate less. The unwise approach, and this is what I hear a lot of students will say to me at first, and it's understandable, we all say it, I'll do my best. I mean, it's a good general attitude to have. But I always ask the class, why is that such an unwise approach to really making progress on this problem? And they'll come up with it typically, and maybe you have the ideas out in the group out there. It's that it's too vague. And it's hard to be motivated by just the idea that I'll do my best. Or it's hard to kind of follow through on the idea of, yeah, I know I should study tonight. Yeah, and I think I'll study tonight. So this is the idea of this approach being too vague and not working well. So a goal without a plan is just a wish. So we'll explore this a little further because this involves another key tip here in terms of being productive. Willpower without a plan. All right, I swear I'll get to it later. It goes back to procrastination. But here's the essence of it. And this works, and you can do this, you can practice this right now in terms of something that maybe you need to do later tonight, that you want to choose to do later this afternoon or this evening. You turn a vague intention to act. I'll do my best, I have to study later, into a specific intention to act. So there's research behind this. A lot of these ideas are sort of science-based. That's why I'm presenting them to you. They've been tested and they do work. So here's one that definitely works. Turn a vague intention to try harder into a specific intention to act. I'm sports oriented, so if you think of a coach who has a timeout and he's trying to motivate his players, and thinking of basketball, he'll give them specific goals. He'll say or she'll say over the next 4 minutes, we want to out-rebound them, we want to have more steals, and he'll make very specific goals because that increases their focus. And that's what helps in terms of productivity. So it generalizes out. So here's how you do it. Sorry. So how to improve goal attainment. You move from I need to do some studying tonight to, this is the first step, I intend to study tonight. Now language makes a difference. So we're turning this into an intention. All right, I intend to study tonight. Now we need to get more specific than that. Turn it into when, and this is just an example, when I return from dinner, I will go to the library and read chapter 2. That's what I do with the day students who are here on campus and going to the library at night. You can do this for yourself by being specific about what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, and when you're going to do it. And it helps to write it down. So I intend to, that example again was after dinner, go to the library and read chapter 2. So for yourself, write down a specific intention you can use later today or this evening or tomorrow, and write it down. And the chances are, and research shows, you're more apt to follow through when you make it a specific intention. That's the point. We won't spend time on this. This is another good exercise. We won't get into this. It's mental contrasting. They know research says that it's the best way to set goals and develop motivation. So not only is it important to think about, I'll just outline it for you, not only is it important to think about achieving your goal, getting a certain grade point average, receiving your diploma, your degree, etc., and how that's going to feel. That's important. But it's also important to reflect on the obstacles that stand in the way. So it's not just about visualizing ourselves on the gold medal stand, right? It's visualizing how we're going to get there and realistically what it's going to take. So when we do this mental contrasting, if you will, first thinking about what it's going to feel like to get there, but then being realistic about what the obstacles are. And of course, there could be many, and that's where the self-awareness comes in. And you write down what the obstacles are, and then ideas of how you're going to deal with them and overcome them. Again, it has to do with getting very specific. There's a much greater chance that we reach our goals than if we have just that general striving. Well, in terms of distractions, I think this is a big issue, not just for younger students anymore, for all of us. What pulls us away from our important work? And certainly we're all tied to our mobile devices. We're all tied to our phones. We're all sending out texts and getting texts all day long. It's not only the text, and we get anxious and stressed about it, because it's not only the text that we're receiving, sometimes it gets us worked up. Often it's the ones we're not getting that we think we should be getting, or that we're not getting them at a certain time. And that's a constant stream of little kind of bumps in the road of a day that can make us a bit stressed, anxious, frustrated, angry. And they occur very frequently and can create a distraction because the phones are always there. They're always there for us to check on, or the iPads, or of course, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So we do need strategies on how to deal with distractions. What to do about distractions, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here. We're going to wrap this up fairly in just a few minutes. But certainly this is an area where we have to watch for self-deception. So self-awareness comes in again. And what are the things that we say to ourselves that tell us it's okay to keep checking our phone, or it's okay to keep getting away from the work we need to do? And we can deceive ourselves by things like, yeah, it'll only take a minute. I only want to check just for a sec here. Well, we know then it goes longer than that. But we can have an intention to spend a certain amount of time. So it does involve self-discipline. Or we might have to take the tough approach to shut off our devices. Easier said than done, I know. There are some apps that can help us deal with distractions, and where you can have control. You can decide how much control you want over having things shut down, partially, totally. And I can't give you the name of a certain app, but you can explore that if this is a major issue that you're aware of. It's shared by so many of us today. Briefly on, this is one that, going back to procrastination, usually involves an issue and a counseling issue. And of course, you're all students here, and you're all eligible. So if you're a full-time graduate student or full-time PLS student, then you're eligible to come in for a number of counseling sessions here in our counseling and psychological services in A504 Marion Gardens. And if you're part-time, you can come in for short-term problem focus, which would be 3 to 4 sessions, which often is enough to kind of tackle, say, an issue like this. So this is one of the things about procrastination, where it can be fueled by this unconscious conflict between our inner child and our parent. And we can be much more aware of what the parent that we have inside of us is telling us, I should do, I must do this, I have to do this, come on, it sort of berates us. But then the child in us, which is often more powerful because it's unconscious, doesn't like to be bossed around. So we'll do whatever we want to do. And again, this can get really tangled up and take some kind of coaching to kind of get through. So if you can relate to this, it's a tough nut to crack, but you can. And it's certainly something I'd be willing to help you with. It might involve just a session or two to at least kind of get the ball rolling, and at least have a blueprint of how to get out of this tangle between the parent and the child within us. It involves kind of unhooking from this internal conflict. The key is self-awareness. The key is self-compassion, which we'll end with here in a second. And it means consulting with the wise mind, the very conscious part, the adult part, and not the child or the parent. Getting in touch with our better self, if you will. So, these are some of the strategies we covered today. I know in quick fashion, I usually go for an hour, a little bit more. become more connected and empathic towards your future self. That helps build commitment. Use reverse scheduling, which you can look into a little bit more, for effective and realistic time management, and to practice, to build up the willpower muscle. Become very good at starting work and building the willpower muscle. That's tied into that unscheduled, but you can do it, without having to do the unscheduled. Create a sense of urgency by setting specific goals. Those are implementation intentions, which you took through, and you hopefully have one lined up for later today, tonight, tomorrow. Final word is don't be hard on yourself for procrastinating, and don't be hard on yourself in general. Of course, easier said than done, but we're finding out, studies show that if you resolve to bounce back and create another fresh start, we always have that chance for another fresh start with an implementation intention, so to speak, you will lessen the negative emotions surrounding the task and procrastinate less in the future. What I'm talking about here is a little self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is a growing kind of sense based on research that self-compassion, that ability for us to be kinder towards ourselves, it's more important than self-esteem. And it's not about being easy on ourselves. Think about the kind of the perfect coach. Again, I'm sports-minded, so I go to the kind of the perfect coach. I've had one in my background. Not easy, was challenging and tough at times, right? But always had my back. So can we develop that attitude towards ourselves? Because we can be our own worst enemy. Our mind can turn on us. Our mind can, it's like the mind turning on its host. And it doesn't help if we've got that harsh inner critic going that only increases stress. But it's just, you just can't stop it by saying you're going to stop it. There's a way to kind of develop self-compassion. There are a lot of good books out there right now, which I can tell you about if you're interested. But a little self-compassion goes a long way, especially in terms of being more productive as well. A moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. A string of such moments can change the course of your life. By Christopher Germer. So I'd like to end on that note, and I hope you picked up some tips there that you'd like to explore a little bit more, that make sense to you, at least one. And, we have time, I guess, for a question or two you can ask now or put in the queue. And so before we wrap up, you can see if there are any questions. But thanks for listening in on this first webinar. And maybe we can do another one on another topic in the future. Dan can assist me.
All right, thank you everyone for attending. I am not seeing any questions here, but if you do have any questions, you can feel free to send us an email. You can send Adult Student Life an email at adultstudentlife@sju.edu. We're happy to help you out. And we can also point you to Greg Nichols and the Counseling Center and Services and all of their contact information as well. Feel free to reach out. Again, that email is adultstudentlife@sju.edu. And we hope to see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this. All right, thank you very much.